light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I'm Sister Who. When people ask me, what is my show about, after all, the best description I've been able to come up with is that it's common sense discussions of issues of life and spirituality. Frequently the two being so interwoven that it's hard to talk about one without bridging into comments about the other. Life and spirituality. The spirituality, the intangible but very real part of ourselves and our relationships and our world. It may not be concrete, it may not be made of actual matter, and yet it shapes and defines the way life unfolds. What we believe, how we feel, how we relate to that which is greater than ourselves, and how we relate to that which is less than ourselves. There are so many discussions that I would like to have, and ideally it would be wonderful to have someone as a guest on the show who would represent that perspective so that we could have a dialogue and scratch the surface in meaningful ways. Because I'm not able to always find adequate guests who are willing to come on the show and talk about things with me, I given a choice between not addressing the subject at all and saying whatever I can about it in the most humble and hopefully insightful way I can, I guess I would rather speak up. And perhaps if I say something that people don't like, it will encourage the conversation and the dialogue to begin. As always, as I said in a number of shows, if you have a different opinion, if you want to come on the show and talk about this and give your perspective, you are absolutely welcome to do so. Just contact me through one of the means described in the website that I always list in the end credits of the show, basically sisterwho.com, through the internet. In any case, today I wanted to do a little bit of discussion about the relatively modern profession of life coaching. And I have a number of acquaintances and friends who describe themselves as being life coaches. And my intent is not to extend any judgment toward anyone by anything I say. These are, I'm seeking to address the subject, not attack the person. I think that which is true and which has genuine integrity and credibility can in fact stand up to all the questioning we can throw at it, up to and including Sister Who. When people ask, why are you Sister Who, and why has this work been going on for over 21 years now, and what good do you think you're accomplishing, and how do you know you're accomplishing any good at all? These are all questions that I need to be careful not to run from, but to be willing to face and address those questions and acknowledge why, even when I can't answer, I still feel the need to persist. What principle or belief or point of faith or something keeps me going. These are the sorts of deeper discussions I would love to have with life coaches as well. Occasionally I get to have them, but most of the time it seems, and I don't know if this is because the profession of life coaching is so new, or if it really hasn't, maybe because it's so new, it hasn't defined itself adequately yet. Maybe those who are professional life coaches haven't wrestled with the questions in the same way that people have wrestled with the questions of other professions for hundreds of years. In regard to being a minister, for example, I joked with a friend once many years ago that a minister without a congregation is a minister with a day job, because we live within an economically obsessed time where everything is oriented around money and paychecks and having financial resources. And while the contributions of ministers and teachers and all sorts of artists are absolutely invaluable, they are not necessarily compensated on that scale. And because of that, one might be tempted to think that they're less important, and that clearly is not true. There is so much that artists and teachers and ministers add to life, but But when we live within an age where everything is measured by the dollar, important things get forgotten, and vital things sometimes get left out simply because they can't show a profit margin or a balance sheet that would satisfy a New York stockbroker. For me, it is a very small step actually from a life coach to a minister. And the essential difference perhaps would be that the life coach is not specifically oriented toward spiritual issues, but is often more oriented, in my understanding, toward relational issues, toward personal growth progressions, but not necessarily the relationship between the individual and whatever is greater than that person, be that nature or God or the universe or principles or ideology or the world or whatever you want to name. There is some relationship between the individual and that which is greater than the individual, which opens this whole nother dimension of being. And if we totally neglect that, to me you have an incomplete person. All that being said, the thing that seems a little perplexing about both ministers and life coaches is that there seems to be a certain inclination to thinking that these professions should be provided free of charge, that they should be generous gifts to humanity, that in some sense the ministerial role is one of service to the congregation or to the whole of humanity or to something outside of the self. And in that sense, to me, life coaching sufficiently imitates ministry that it could be considered a form of ministry, but I don't know that I'm prepared to go out on a limb and say that life coaching should be given free or that ministerial services should be given free. The problem we live in our current time is that we have the value or the place of money and service in our world has been flipped upside down by greed and narcissism and selfishness. Money was created as a tool to serve the community, to serve the quality of life, but the way it is employed so much now, it's as if life was created to serve money, as if individuals were created to serve the corporation, instead of the corporation being simply the resulting conglomeration of all the individuals working together towards some common goal. But it's not the corporation that mattered, it's the fact that you had people, lots and lots and lots of individuals who were acting collaboratively, because there was at least a minimum of mutual concern for each other and for creating a community and a sustainable life together. And that the corporation was simply the tool by which this happened. But again, it seems that so many things have gotten flipped on their head, and suddenly, instead of money being the tool that serves humanity, humanity is the tool that serves money. And as is the case with so many other things. When it comes to life coaching and ministry, on one hand, I would say the community needs to be aware of the contribution that these things make and be sure that those who do them are supported in a way that they can continue to do them. That it's not about someone doing without in order to be a service to humanity in some sort of martyrish way, but instead that it's the community saying to the life coach or minister, you are a valuable part of our community, and so we are going to support your ability to continue making your positive contribution to our community. But whether that means money or whether that means providing a house or food or clothing or whatever, they're all points of negotiation and ways that communities create official and unofficial contracts with specific individuals within the community. The thing that worries me about both professions, I guess, And there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's simply identifying a problem, because I don't have a perfect answer for it either. And that is how to decide, I don't like to use the word qualified, but who are the most recommendable people to be in that profession, and how do you screen the process so that those who have integrity and who have dedication to the particular position of service are the ones allowed to do that position of service, and that those who are simply looking for a get-rich-quick scheme or an easier life, my feeling would be that they're in that position for the wrong reasons, if that's the reason they're doing it. I was talking with a friend about going to theological school, and she said she had visited the same school I attended, and someone had made the comment that the reason they were going there is because it promised to result in a financially stable life. And she turned around and walked out because she said it was absolutely the wrong reason to be going into ministry. And I had to agree with her. You know, when it's not about serving the growth of others, but when it's about serving your own economic and physical survival, something has become toxically narcissistic. It's as if all this interconnected relationship that is supposed to be the web of connection between you and everyone around you, instead all becomes turned in on yourself, and it becomes kind of a restricting, confining straitjacket of sorts. And the work of personal and spiritual growth never gets done. The other thing, I guess, that kind of bothers me about the whole life coaching profession is that it applies somewhat to ministerial roles as well. If people decide that what will answer their need is a minister or a life coach or whatever, or a psychologist, then there will be those who will notice that and seek to profit from it. And to me, it's doing the right thing for the wrong reason. To look at becoming a life coach because that's what everybody's paying for these days. Becoming a minister because that's what everyone's paying for these days. But as soon as you've got people who are moving that direction, then they become a consumer target for yet another branch of marketing, which is to say, if you want to declare yourself a certified, and I always think certified by whom? Certified life coach, certified minister, certified dog catcher, certified whatever. Somebody out there will be happy, I'm sure, to design a very expensive program where they delve into every single aspect of this profession that they could possibly imagine, and to educate you in all those things, and ta-da, here's your certification. Certification doesn't necessarily mean you'll be able to do the job better than anyone else. The knowledge that has been presented as relevant to the field may not, in fact, have any application. More importantly, the fee that is charged for that education may or may not be something that you will ever recoup in the wages that position gets. And so it kind of becomes almost a scam on the student, hoping, incidentally, that the student is not trying to scam the general public. That when somebody comes to a life coach and says, how do I deal with this situation? The life coach has more than simple platitudes to offer in response. My thought is that most certified or competent life coaches would, but I saw some of the people who graduated from college with me and who graduated from my master's program with me, and I don't know that I would want to put anyone's spiritual or personal health in their hands. They may have completed all the requirements for the degree to frame and hang on their wall, but I wouldn't consider them competent to deal with the various people I've met over the years. And so what does the degree really mean? I suppose as much or as little as you want it to. It's still, life doesn't come with guarantees. There's no guarantee. The degree doesn't guarantee that you will get a person who will give you the right answer. Ultimately, what the certifications and the certificates and the degrees mean is that this person has gone through a certain training, read a certain collection of books. They may in fact be more equipped than the average person to deal with whatever the situation is. Then again, they may have slept through that class and they may not be able to apply what they learned. In some sense, it kind of comes back to the old adage of let the buyer beware, but I'm really not the cynical sort. I'm really more the optimistic sort. And so it becomes a little problematic for me to be here on the show saying, okay, so what does one do? Are we all, is it all a matter of chance? I guess the point I come back to is saying that we are each other's guardian angels and we need to be there for each other. And ultimately, in many situations, the best resource we have is each other. I suppose the question comes, if the training wasn't demanding and wasn't expensive, if it would still be effective. Or would even more people think of it as a get-rich-quick scheme, so that you'd wind up with the same problem either way. That there are those who are looking for the easy way through life, and there are those who are looking for the meaningful, deep and profound way through life that basically has them leaving this world far wealthier than they arrived, taking a wealth of experiences and memories and understanding with them. Because they understood that the possessions, the money, the bank accounts, all of that does not go with them. It kind of bothers me, though, the few times I've talked with people who have described their conversations with their life coaches, and without going into any personal details whatsoever, the point that stood out to me, I guess, is that they were essentially talking with someone who was giving good advice, and or at least we hope it was good advice. It kind of reminds me of the same sort of conversations that used to happen for free in times past with neighbors across the fence or whatever, when people functioned as a community, and when somebody was hurt or discouraged or depressed, how the community responded, and people noticed when they weren't there. And now if I don't show up for a particular class or meeting or church service, in all likelihood nobody will call during the following week to see what happened to me, or if I'm still okay, or if I'm in need of anything. Which suggests to me that people really aren't watching over each other as much as we need to. Conversely, if we do watch over each other, and we're doing all the positive relational stuff, it then would leave me with the question of, so how did this happen in the first place? There's something we're overlooking here, because there's no effect that does not have a cause. So on one hand, I guess life coaching could be very, very good, because having a fresh set of eyes to give a different perspective, someone who's read a few books that you haven't. If you're looking for a life coach and you find someone with whom you seem to get along very well and all that, could be good. And then again, if it's only because all of you have read the same books, it may be more helpful to find someone who's read some books you haven't read. But it comes back to this question of holding each other accountable. To not allow oneself to be charged for something that was not actually an improvement or a help. To not allow someone to bill themselves according to a particular name that they can't necessarily demonstrate. If someone hangs out a sign in front of their house saying that they're a competent plumber, you would expect them to be able to fix pipes, so that when your pipes break, you call them, they come and they fix it. If when your pipes break, you call them and they say, well, I'm not actually a plumber, well, then you're in a mess, because you thought you could call someone who would fix it, and they're saying the whole thing was a lie, and your trust gets betrayed. And that doesn't need to happen. So, when it comes to life coaches, are they simply giving good advice just like any friend would? And should our good friends start charging us for all the advice they give out? Or, I guess in my opinion, should we just get to the point where we don't use money the same way anymore because it got in the way of us caring about each other? To not use money as a destination or a goal, but to use money as the tool it was meant to be, the opportunity to demonstrate whatever good we can more than somebody else could. For everyone who wants a certification, there's some kind of expensive training program out there for it, I'm sure. I don't know that you're doing yourself or humanity any favors, though, by paying thousands of dollars for a profession that ultimately may be what you knew all along. And so in that very real sense, if you find yourself in that situation, what you essentially bought with that is not greater competency. What you bought with that, whatever expense the courses cost, is the opportunity to, like the respective gatekeeper you just satisfied, to go out and present the next generation of misleading statements and false assurances and so forth. Are there people who have been genuinely helped by life coaching? I have no doubt there are. And I'm not questioning that, and I would say to the life coaches who helped him, keep up the good work. All that being said, the corollary to trust is accountability. The one who refuses to be accountable should not be trusted. And the one who is trusted needs to be held accountable. Not just that they're willing to be held accountable, but that they are in fact held accountable. To do less would be to neglect our own job in some way. That it's as if we want the universe to be on autopilot to serve ourselves, and the only autopilot available is that which basically leads us straight to our coffin, straight to our demise, straight to death. It is by the love within the relationships, however, that we find these insights passing from one person to another, frequently without any control. And it's not even that a life coach could necessarily take responsibility for a particular accomplishment, because that accomplishment may in fact be a combination of life coaching the person and serendipity and some other things as well. If somebody wants to tell you how to live your life, though, the primary danger that I guess jumps out at me is to remember that you're the one who's going to have to live with the consequences of whatever choice they advise. That you're the one who's going to have to live with the consequences of what does or doesn't happen. And because the other person will not have to live with the consequences, it is not fair, just, or right for them to be making a decision for which they will feel no consequences. That, to me, I guess, comes back to this accountability trust thing. Can you trust yourself? Well, I would say only if you're accountable to yourself. It rather reminds me of the Muppet movie where Kermit and his friends are driving this vehicle headed to California to become rich and famous and so forth. And in the end, they break down in the middle of the desert, and everyone's concerned about whether or not they're going to get there in time for the audition the next day. And Kermit goes off to have a talk with himself and basically comes to the conclusion that it's not true that he didn't promise anyone anything. Ultimately, what is true is that he promised himself. they're promises we need to make to ourselves as well. There are promises that theologians have insisted God has made to humanity that I don't know that God has completely lived up to those promises, but for whatever reason, that didn't encourage me to lose my faith in God as much as to understand that those who claim to speak on God's behalf and say, this is what God said, this is exactly what God said, and so this is what you have to do, it's entirely possible that God had absolutely nothing to do with whatever they're contributing to the universe at this point. If one is to become a life coach, it is imperative, in my opinion, to do it with an attitude of service and gratitude, not with a desire for wealth or postponement of dealing with some unpleasant thing they don't want to deal with, or it is ultimately about finding that place of integrity within oneself. And if a life coach can help, great. If a minister can help, great. Bear in mind that the minister and the life coach need support also in order to be and continue to do the work they do, but also understand that it is the congregation and the clients and the customers who teach the life coach and the minister what they need to know so that they will be prepared for the next person who comes through the door. It is not some magic wand that makes it all magically go away. It is something that reaches beyond oneself into greater and more holistic relationships.